I can't think of an introduction. I don't really do introductions. I probably should put some I should probably just put some random free music and use that as an intro. I guess that'd probably work. Anywho, welcome to the first episode of the Your Twenties Podcast. This first episode, I'm going to talk about something that's very close to my heart, and that's some weight loss stuff. For me, I've lost about 85, 87 pounds, I think, give or take, the day if I've had a shit, over the last couple of years, which is pretty good. It's a fair amount. It's changed my life in a hell of a lot of different ways, which I'll come into over the next coming episodes. But today I really wanted to talk about just some of the basics and some of the things that have helped me when I started trying to lose weight and have lost weight. I still have a bit to go. I've by no means got the perfect body, and if you can imagine losing 85 pounds, you don't tend to imagine I ever will be. I will have the perfect body ever, but it's something I can always work towards. I was speaking to someone at work the other day who I hadn't really known that long. They're a relatively new starter. And for context, our office is quite a big office, and the entire office is a couple of thousand people, but in our sort of room there's about 50 or 60. And as you can imagine, people are always bringing in snacks, cakes, biscuits. It's one of those offices where people seem to celebrate the smallest, shittiest victory, because the jobs are all so soul destroying that people have to celebrate anything to sort of get them through it. But so people are always bringing in cakes and putting them in the kitchen for everyone to have and picking out these emails, and they're pretty much all gone by about 11 o'clock in the morning. So if you don't haul ass in there straight away and pick up any of the nice biscuits, then they've gone. The vultures will pounce pretty much instantly. And I was talking to this woman. She was saying, "Oh, I've noticed you lost a bit of weight recently. How did you go about it?" I said, "Well, to me, I've just been carrying on the way I have been." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" Sort of explained to her that I was sort of towards the tail end. I'm close to reaching my goals at the moment. Big goal I have coming up is 100 pounds, which is ridiculous, to be honest. But I was talking to her about it, and I just said, "Well, for me, it's pretty easy at the moment. I've sort of got into the routine. Go to the gym. I eat relatively well. It's not that difficult once you get going." And she was saying these things that resonated quite strongly with me about how she didn't really know where to start, and she was finding it difficult. She eats really bad food. She eats too much, the wrong foods, doesn't like exercise. The same sort of rut, I guess, that I was stuck in when I was at my worst weight. So I explained to her what I'm going to explain here. And to me, I just said, well, look, if you start off simple and you start off easy, and you start off easy with something that you can do and you think you can change, small incremental changes over a long period of time will make massive differences. She said she didn't really get it, or she wanted to be one of these people that lost lots of weight very quickly. I said, you know what, if you think you're the person that can do that, then that's fine, go ahead. If you think it's going to work for you, if you want to go on those ridiculous crash diets, then whatever. I don't think they're healthy. I don't recommend to anyone that they do it because I don't think they last. And that's exactly what happened with her. She tried. So the next week she bought in all these Slim Fast shakes, and these. And she started doing intermittent fasting. And this is someone who is going from. She said she was eating chocolates and sausage rolls for breakfast and snacks throughout the day and big lunches full of rice. Going home and saying she's having like McDonald's or something, to then going 100% the opposite direction, intermittent fasting with having protein shakes and things for lunch. And I just said it's not going to work. And it's not going to work because you're going too extreme. You're going from one extreme to the other in a day. And we don't do that with anything else in our lives. We don't go from... Think of it in the gym sense. You wouldn't, on your first run, you wouldn't go for a marathon. You would start trying to jog a little bit. And it's the same way I think I approach the same way exercise you should do with diet. It's You don't go to the gym and start deadlifting 200 kilos. You start by deadlifting what you can deadlift. And you train yourself and you accommodate yourself to get better. 2 weeks later, she seemed to have completely failed with this diet and she was back to eating shit, which is sort of what's inspired me to try and make this, because I think it's an important viewpoint. And me and a couple of other colleagues were talking about it in front of her. This wasn't like a behind her back kind of thing. Because a few other people in the office are quite health conscious, and with all these cakes and things being brought around, it always gets brought up in a discussion. And I mentioned that the calories on some of these biscuits that someone had brought in were 80 calories each. 80 calories a biscuit, which is, some of you might be surprised by that, some of you might not be. So 80 calories, you have 3 of those biscuits, which is quite easy to do across a day. 240 calories in biscuits. Just one day, picking up a couple of biscuits, 250 calories close to. Over a week, 700 odd calories a week. That's if you do it 3 days a week, 700 odd calories a week. Now for me, when I was sort of at the peak of my trying to lose weight phase, I was on about trying to stick towards 1400 to 1800 calories a day. So that's over 3 times a week eating 3 biscuits a day that people are bought in from work. That's almost half a day's food allowance on biscuits. Which to me is utterly obscene. And I didn't really know how else to explain it to people. I just thought, that in terms of context, 3 biscuits a day, 3 days a week, that's almost half a day's food allowance spent on biscuits. And for me, it's if you are struggling with your weight and you're struggling with where to start with your weight loss. Some people 100%, some people are these absolute 100% freaks of nature that can just go from eating chocolate cake and McDonald's and terrible things all day to the next Monday going to the gym 5 days a week, eating salad for lunch, protein shakes and all of that. And if that works for you, then fair play to you, because I don't think it works for the majority of people. I think you have to have a very specific mindset for that kind of transformation. But for most people, and this is the way I started my weight loss, was identifying 1 or 2 things that you can slowly cut out. So for me, one of the things was crisps. So instead of eating, I used to eat so much, but you have maybe a couple of packets of crisps a day. Take those out, stop eating those, and all of a sudden you're down a couple of 100 calories a day. Which doesn't sound like much, right? It doesn't sound like much if you're that big, or when I was sort of close to 200, I think I was around 270, 280 pounds, I think it was. When I was around that weight, 200 calories a day that's not going to change everything. And it's not intended to change everything. Because after 2 weeks, you go, right, what's the next thing I can change? I feel comfortable with that change now. I'm used to it. What's the next thing I can change? And anyone who started, like I said before, the way I tend to think about it is the same way you go to the gym. You can maybe start trying to run for 10 minutes. When you can run for 10 minutes, you feel comfortable running for 10 minutes. And that's no longer a challenge. So you have to give yourself the next challenge, which might be run for 12 minutes. So then you get used to trying to run for 12 minutes. In the same way with your diet, I think it's important to go, right, let's make a small change here. A couple of weeks later, when you're sort of getting used to it, make the next change. Then a couple of weeks after that, make the next change and the next change. Now, it's very hard for me to give specific advice, because obviously everyone will be able to see the way they're eating differently, and everyone will eat different things, and people eat at different times and eat different foods and like different things. So one of the thing that resonated with me the most was doing a food journal diary using I used the MyFitnessPal app, but there's many others that you can use. MyFitnessPal I found brilliant, to be honest. And logging a food journal of all the food you've eaten. And that really, to me, showed how much I was eating and the particular things that stood out far more than other things. Certain calorie dense foods that you might not even be sure are that calorie dense can stick out like an absolute sore thumb, and you can go, "Whoa! I didn't realize I was eating. I was drinking, I think 1,000 calories a week on milk. So I was drinking full fat milk and coffee, and sometimes have a glass of milk or something like that. Cut that down to skimmed milk in your coffees or black coffees. Suddenly you saved 1,000 calories over a week. So that things like that build up, and small changes like that flip around, and that you save your 1,000 calories a week on milk. You save your 700 calories a week not eating biscuits from the office. You switch having 2 packs of crisps every single day to 1 pack of crisps only at weekends. All of a sudden, these slow incremental changes that you've made one by one, all of a sudden in 6 months to a year's time, you've got a completely different lifestyle and completely different way of looking at your food. And that to me was the core bit. And that's the advice I give to anyone when people I haven't seen in a while say, "Oh my God, you've lost a bunch of weight. How did you do it?" I just say, look, just make a small change. Then when you're used to that small change, do the next small change. When you're used to that small change, do the next one, the next one. And all of a sudden, I can look back on the lifestyle I had before and the food that I was eating before. I can go, "Oh, I cannot imagine going from one day eating what I used to eat to the day after switching to what I eat now." But because I've made it gradually, and like I said, people can do it. Some people are absolutely maniacs, but because I've done it slowly, I've got used to it, slowly accommodated the new diet. I've actually probably changed my tastes. I've become a bit more, I guess, enthusiastic about food, in the sense that when you're bigger, you tend to just think salads are horrible. I still don't really like salads that much because they tend to be quite boring. Um, but getting used to the right foods, getting your tastes do change. And anyone that's lost a lot of weight, especially if you go on things like Lose It, the subreddit, people will say, your taste tend to adjust. You sometimes try. I had a McDonald's a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, "Oh, this is not good. It doesn't really satisfy in the way that it used to. I don't think." So that to me is really important. It's just cutting out small bits here and there, slowly making those incremental changes over a longer period of time, make the real difference. And that's the problem, because no one really wants to hear that. That's the biggest struggle I've always had, is no one wants to hear that. And people probably listen to this and going to go, "Nah, nah, nah, nah. I don't want something that's going to take a year to start implementing properly. I want to lose 6 stone in 6 months, and I want to be absolutely shredded by summer, and I'm going to look amazing. And I want you to tell me exactly how to do it in the best way possible." And you know what? It's not feasible. It's not realistic. Because what's much more important, and the same thing comes to sort of training, is that people tend to go by the most extreme situations. People tend to go through all this scientific research, and they look at, "Oh, the best diet is this, and you should be eating this, and you should get this calories and this protein, this, go keto, then you've got paleo, and then you've got low carb, high carb, vegan, or different diets, different fads, or different styles that people will plug to you almost." And to me, it's the same thing about going to the gym. It's, you could have the best coaches in the world design you a training program, and it could be the same thing that the most elite athletes do to make the most progress, and it could be technically the best way for you to lose weight, scientifically proven. It could have the best exercises, the best routine, the most optimal training methods. It's in the same way that you could have the most optimal diet, and you could have, the exact measurements made out, and you could have the exact food that you need cut down into 5 meals, and they could be broken down into macronutrients and all of this. But in a year's time, if you're not doing it, then it's pretty much fucking pointless, isn't it? Because to me, I've always said the best diet you can go on is one that you're going to stick to for the next year, that you can stick to for the year after that. I think people on, I browse the Lose It subreddit a fair amount, and people always say, look, can you see yourself doing it for the rest of your life? It's a lifestyle change. Oh. It's 100% a lifestyle change. It's about changing the way you look at food, changing the way you look at exercise, and going, right, how can I build this into my life? How can I incorporate it into my life? But most people struggle with getting started. And to me, I got started by slowly making changes. I did try it the other way. I slowly made some changes to start with, and that helped me drop a couple of stone, and that was fine. I then sort of hit a plateau, and I just went 100 to 0. I started going extreme, gym as much as possible, really low calorie diet, things like that. And it worked for a little bit, and I lost a fair amount of weight, but I put it back on again because it was not sustainable at all. And to me, it's all about doing something that you can sustain for the rest of your life. You don't necessarily have to sustain the same calorie deficit or anything like that, but you have to be able to maintain and live with the food choices you make. And that brings me on to sort of the other things I wanted to talk about. And that was just, if you're doing a diet, if you're doing this lifestyle change and you're changing the way you eat, don't be afraid to eat stuff that you like. Just don't do it all the time. Because I found as well, I'm never going to ever eat a donut ever again. Well, that's not fun. Everyone loves a donut. I'm never going to go to McDonald's again. I mean, even the Queen probably just occasionally wants a Big Mac. I mean, it's one of those things where you just go, take it with a pinch of salt. Enjoy food, but reward you. It's very difficult to explain without knowing people's exact diet and the foods that they like and the foods they don't. But to me, you don't necessarily want to reward yourself with food, but you want to make your diet bearable to live with. And if you make your diet just over the top, crazy healthy, nothing that you like, and if you like all the food, then that's fine. If you like it, then it's good. And if you love healthy food and you can live off broccoli, then that's great. But everyone's heard the story about the dude who starts going to the gym and just eats chicken and rice for the rest of his life, and he absolutely hates it. And if that's not going to be sustainable to you, then don't do it. Find another way. And it might be that your calorie deficit, let's say you want to go down to a diet of, say, 1,500 calories, but you find that too difficult. That's fine. Start with 1,800 calories then. Start with 2,000. If you're in a deficit and you want to lose weight, then do something that will allow you to maintain that deficit in a healthy way. Don't just, I read this BuzzFeed article that says I've got to eat these 5 different types of broccoli, or this broccoli pizza or whatever the crap cauliflower pizza, that's it, people are making. If you don't like it, then you're not going to eat it in a year's time, so you're not going to stick to the diet. So then you end up going to crash, and then you're just going to start binge eating. You're just going to go back to the way you were eating before. So start with small, incremental changes with foods that you like, foods that you enjoy, and go from there and slowly make the transition. And like I said, people are going to hate it when they come up to me and they say, oh, what advice you got for weight loss? I was like, well, you better be prepared for a long fucking journey, mate. Because it takes a long time if you do it the right way. And you know what? I don't do it the most optimal way, but I do it the way that works for me. And it's not the most optimal way. I could probably eat healthier. I could probably eat better. But you know what? If I went crazy over the top, I know that I can't sustain that way of eating, and that style of diet just doesn't suit me at the moment. That might change in the future, but right now right now I know that works for me. So it's about learning to get to know yourself and learning about how a diet can work for you. And I think that's a very personal journey that people have to go on. And hopefully throughout this sort of the start of this series, I can go into the journey that I've gone through. And yeah, it's been an absolute wild journey for me, to be honest. The amount of things that have changed in my life, relationship wise, or confidence, or clothes, the way I approach almost everything in my life has entirely changed from losing weight, which is almost frightening. And people could say people are fat phobic and all of this bullshit that doesn't exist. But it does have a massive impact, and if you are struggling with anything, then feel free to find me on social media. It's at Survive Your 20s, Instagram and Twitter. Follow me there, and subscribe here if you want the next episode. So the next episode, I'm going to continue probably talking more about sort of the weight loss journey and probably go more into this training aspect as opposed to diet. I'll go through a couple of the examples I've used in terms of recipes or more information what I've done and how I've progressed, which should be fun. That was a really terrible ending. I don't know how to end things. I guess I'll just say bye. Bye.